gain trust from journalists because I say, look, you've never heard of me, well, go to my blog and you can read all the stuff and you'll see whether or not I'm trustworthy. And so the blog has helped, but ultimately it comes down to old-fashioned relationship building. And too many people, despite living in this social media world, too many people don't build real relationships anymore. And that's the root cause in my opinion.
Can I just add as well, sometimes relationship isn't good enough kind of basis for trust, because you can have a really good relationship with a scientist and then find out they work from a shed in the back of their garden and don't do good science. I mean, you know, this happened with the MMR story, you know.
Yeah, how did that happen? And that's just...
He wasn't in shed, he was in a leading teaching hospital.
Okay, not sorry, it wasn't MMR. I can't remember. But I mean, it's happened before where journalists have not thoroughly researched who the person is, but you know, it's even if you have the relationship, then you can sometimes be mistaken. You know, relationship is.
Well, I think if you've actually done your job, the chances of that happening should be minimal. I mean, Rupert Sheldrake, you brought him up. Nobody should be giving him the time of day, and yet so many journalists do.
The problem with the MMR was that it was published in The Lancet, which is why I've tried to focus on peer review. Of course, any decent science journalist would think, decent peer review here, let's go. Sorry, before I come back to you, Henry, there's somebody there and somebody there, then we'll come to you, Henry.
I am a press officer for a research center, and we do, anytime we do a media training series and talk to scientists about their anxieties about this process, the overwhelming feedback that we get is that the step of the process that makes them anxious is not so much whether the writer is going to present their work accurately, because by and large they're flattered and delighted to have someone pay attention to their work, because they know that in the real world they have 12 readers who are reading their journal articles. But the part of the process that makes them very, very, very anxious is when they're called on to comment on a colleague's work. And they say, it is very, very difficult for us to give an honest, substantive comment. None of us would ever, ever, ever say to a journalist, my colleague's work is a sham. We would never, ever, even if we would write that anonymously in a peer review. And they tell me, when we do peer review in our own field, those comments are anonymous. And this is the one moment where we are called upon to comment very publicly on our colleagues' work, and they're very reluctant to say anything other than, Dr. X's work is lovely, brilliant piece of work. They have difficult time coming up with anything of substance. So how do you teach if you want to have an outside source comment on a piece of work? How do you help that source make a substantive comment for your story that really adds value to your piece?
I feel like you can talk to your source about the different levels of source dump on background, off the record. Those sorts of things can really be a help if, in terms of, for a journalist, you know, I want to know, like, whether, I did a story earlier this month about a paper in Science that's attracting some fire from chemists because it was like a biology paper and the chemistry and the figure was just plain weird. I think the review of this is still ongoing, and I spoke with a lot of people, but only 2 scientists were willing to be quoted publicly in my article about the things that they thought were off, but a few other scientists were willing to say, well, look, you know, when I first saw this paper, I thought XYZ, but this is off the record. And you could also talk to ABC, maybe somebody there would be. You want to get a body of comments on something like that. I mean, I think that scientists should be willing to be honest, but I can understand that, you know, politics and reputations and all of that. It's a very personal comfort level thing.
Sorry, before we come to you, is there somebody else? Yeah, you have them.
Okay. Well, how much can people do also to at least try to accustom the public itself to at least a little bit more uncertainty and skepticism? I know there is a lot of well, there is a lot of skepticism per se that's going around, but the, more on the issue of actual uncertainty of thought. Maybe not necessarily the sort of skepticism where you're either thinking something's probably fine or definitely wrong. A mild sort of not such an ingrained. Okay, no, I probably should have formulated this statement better. I really should have.
Okay, well, you keep formulating, then we'll hear from Henry, then we'll hear from
This is to amplify Bora's debate at James's point. There is no substitute for, if you're a new journalist and you're talking to people you've never spoken to, what you do is you don't talk, you listen, and you do your homework. So you get the confidence of the scientists, so they have confidence that you know what you're talking about. But if you've been going on down, what you do is what every journalist does, and they did before social media, which is you get to know a lot of people personally and have a track record of knowing them personally. You know their families, you know you've been. This is why we still go to conferences, because there's nothing better than face-to-face interaction and getting to know people personally. I remember when I just started at Nature, and John Maddox, the editor, this will be a news conference, he'd bring me, the rookie junior reporter, the news editor in, and John Maddox would say, I had dinner last night with Lord Oblong Fitz Oblong, the atomic energy establishment, and he said such and such. So this is one of John's answers. Henry, why didn't you call him up? And so I had the imprimatur of John Maddox there, so I would get a good interview based on that old-fashioned journalistic relationship. And I think that even now, for journalists, who do you trust is the people you've learned to get on with for a very long period of time, who you can say, well, I saw this paper in the Journal of Lobster Pot Weaving, and I'm not sure about it. What do you think? And they say, well, Henry, off the record, you wouldn't say that they didn't know you. I saw this paper being delivered and it wasn't very good, don't touch it. Or, well, maybe there's a different story. And they wouldn't tell you unless you've already built that trust through a long series. So in the thing about Christine and the journalist that Bora said, I think if you keep meeting each other with interactions like that, you'll get to know each other, and therefore the guard will be down and you will start to hear things, and the scientist will know that they can tell you things in confidence that aren't going to be broken. And the journalist will know, therefore, as a quid pro quo, that they'll be getting good information that won't be just a whitewash saying, oh, everything my colleague does is lovely.
I think that's an interesting point, but it's interesting if your scientists will go on record and suggest
yes.
It's the same way you cover
and that's
politics,
really
business, and everything else.
Yeah, because you need them to go on record. Else, it becomes completely invalid. You can't quote your sources. David?
Well, I thought of this when, Mr. David, you were speaking of how you try to train the scientists and whether you tell them about the different levels of sourcing, and that if there's something, if I ask them about a paper and they're uncomfortable about the paper, they might offer to talk off the record. I don't know how many scientists know that. I sometimes make a point when I talk to a scientist source, because if someone hasn't dealt with me a lot, of telling them either very briefly or maybe more length about, sometimes I just say, either on or off the record, I wonder what you think of blah, blah, blah. And they have an avenue to express some doubt that is safe and they're not being quoted right off the bat. And maybe I can't use them, but at least I know now, my radar should be turned up a little higher on this story. And if the scientists knew that to start with, then commenting on other papers, which I consider it's a touchy spot for them, that could help.
Okay, we've probably just got enough time for two more contributions.
On that last the graphic that you were just showing, I work for a TV news station, which means I'm the step before grandma, right? So I see, and I'm a web producer at a TV station here in Triangle. I see that. I see exactly what you're talking about firsthand. I see also, to Henry's point about the editors choosing some of these stories, and a lot of times the problem is that the editors or the producers don't have the direct knowledge. Even if the reporter's smart and savvy, the editors and producers might not have that same, smart and savvy, knowledge of science. So I guess my